going on, I think would be more of a, it would be a detriment to more of the village residents as opposed to those who are breaking the law. And Ramapo PD does continue to represent to us that if we're seeing issues with regard to speeding vehicles and things of that nature, cars, trucks, buses, they will continue to be vigilant, they will continue to address our needs, setting up, again, unmarked surveillance, which again is what they did, as I spoke earlier, with regard to finding only the 2 cars doing 32. And they will continue to monitor the area. I guess up until recently, you probably even saw on Saddle River Road, they had the speed trailer set up that was advising people how fast they were going, so they will continue to do that. So, that is the up-to-date information on adjusting village speed limits from 30 to 25. That having been said, we'll move forward to public discussion on agenda items only. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion on the agenda.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Valentine. Thank you, Trustee Miller for the second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? There being none. Again, I thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion with regard to approval of the minutes of our meeting of July the 18th, 2019.
So move.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Valentine. Thank you, Trustee Van Alstyne for the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let the record reflect Trustee Miller will be abstaining with regard to the July 18th meeting. Okay. Next would be resolution, I'll entertain a motion with regard to resolution 2019-66 with regulating the burial of human remains with regard to Village of Chestnut Ridge, outside agencies, referring them to outside agencies. Again, just to explain the procedure, but we'll get the, actually, it's a good idea, we'll get the motion on the table, and then we'll explain it. Thank you, Trustee Miller, for the motion. Wait here a second. Thank you, Trustee Van Alstyne, for the second. As is always the case, as this village has always done since day one, when any proposed laws with regard to the village code has to go through the General Municipal Law Review, GML review, to go to various agencies, in which the county planning, local municipalities will also be involved, and our local planning board. The law that we are proposing right now is very simple. Thou shalt not. Very simple. Thou shalt not be permitted to human burial remains in one's property in Chestnut Ridge. Very simple. There's no sub-agenda. I guess people will still try to make whatever they make out of it, but again, the code is going to say thou shalt not be able to bury human remains on one's property in the village of Chestnut Ridge. That having been said, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There being none. Again, I thank you very much. Next, we'll open up the public hearing with regard to the local law to amend the village code regarding regulating filming in the village of Chestnut Ridge. The last go round, there was a comment / suggestion made with regard to addressing nonprofit organizations and how they would address this filming regulation. The village attorney, again, we thank that individual. She's not here this evening, I don't believe, for that suggestion. But the village attorney did make the appropriate revision, and basically the film permitting fee for students and nonprofit applicants for educational purposes, there will be no daily rate, but there will be a minimal fee of $50. And again, that's so that we know who's the contact, who's who, and things of that nature. So we did take that into consideration with regard to the law. That having been said, we will open up the public meeting with regard to the filming regulation if there's any further questions, comments, or concerns. There being none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing on the filming in the village of Chestnut Ridge.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Valentine, for the motion. Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you, Trustee Van Alstyne, for the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There being none, again, I thank you. Accordingly, I will entertain, let's see. Resolution 2019-67, with regard to the secret determination of significance, approving the local law of the filming with regard to the village.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move resolution number 2019-67.
Thank Next would be Resolution 2019-68, approving our emergency repair of the air conditioning unit at Village Hall with Bertucci Plumbing at $8,244. Thank you, Trustee Miller, for the motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Valentine, for the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, there being none. Thank you very much. By the way, just by FYI, we had to replace the other HVAC, I guess 2 years at least, 2 years ago, and it was about the same price. So it was part of our general maintenance. Unfortunately, as like Murphy's Law, it happens in the middle of the summer as opposed to the winter. But anyway, that having been said, everybody should be able to stay cool again. Next, I would entertain Resolution 2019-69, approving the court-ordered refund of taxes in the amount of $634.36, so ordered by the Honorable Robert M. Berlin.
Mayor, I'll move resolution number 2019-67.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Valentine. And thank you, Trustee Miller, for the second.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, there being none. Again, I thank you. Next, we'll entertain Resolution 2019-70, addressing the abstract of audited claims, which are before you this evening. Again, what's before you is pretty much standard, our standard monthly bills. There's really nothing out of the ordinary that's being incurred here. Obviously, the biggest being the tipping fees and garbage collection.
I move that the funds set forth on pages 1 through 4 on the abstract dated August 15th, 2019, the aggregate amount of $163,480.38 as submitted by the village treasurer be hereby approved.
I thank you, Trustee Miller, for that motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
And I thank you, Deputy Mayor Valentine, for the second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, there being none. Again, I thank you. At this juncture, we will open up the floor to public discussion for any comments, questions, or concerns one may have with regard to the village. Okay. Ms. Lucas, name and address for the record, please. Again, just a reminder, 5 minutes.
Jerry Lievelson, 31 Midway Road. My remarks concern One Carroll Court, which has resumed construction. So given the history of the problems with that project, I inspected the open building file to see if the various issues were resolved. I am sorry to say they were not. 16 months ago, this detailed 23-page complaint about the situation, signed by 83 village residents, was filed with the board. You then tasked the village engineer to provide a second set of eyes, and he has done so inadvertently. But the engineer cannot review specific building issues that are the sole professional concerns of the building inspector, and he has told people this, the engineer. The fact is, most of the issues raised in the complaint from last year were the responsibility of the building inspector alone to address, but it appears that he has acted on virtually none of them. That may have something to do with the fact that the complaint document is still completely missing from the active building file. And that's 1 year ago now from when I first informed the board of this fact. Out of sight, out of mind. I won't now go into all the unresolved issues, but will just describe the most glaring. Any one of these ought to be grounds for stopping this construction and requiring a new and corrected application. First, the previous permit expired in August last year, and I am told it was renewed to resume the current work, though there's no documentation whatsoever of this fact in the file. And who is the proper applicant for this permit? The owner on deed is a religious corporation, Congregation Kerastir, and the property has 100% tax exemption as a clergy residence. Yet Mr. Taub, who I think is the rabbi, was the applicant named as the owner in the first permit, which expired in last August, and recently an affidavit of ownership was filed naming somebody else, Rivka Kraus, as the owner, not representative owner of that lot. Isn't there something wrong here with this? 2, the submitted plans completely lack any specifications for electrical and plumbing work. How can the building permit have been renewed without plans for electrical and plumbing? For this playroom study, okay? I think that alone should tell you there's something wrong. The engineer correctly pointed out in his March 2019 review that the plans still exceed the maximum development coverage for this site, and thus a variance is required. The applicant acknowledged this as well in an email. So why was a building permit renewed when the applicant has not yet gone before the zoning board to get the variance? During last year's site work, a new paved walkway was added from the sidewalk on Caro to an entrance newly added to the right side of the existing house. As mentioned in last year's complaint, this entrance and the paved walkway were completely missing from the plans and the original building permit application, and they are still missing in the current revised plans. You look at the right elevation view of the house, no door. The plans show no pavement, no walkway. And I wonder, perhaps conveniently this was done to avoid adding more to the excessive development coverage, because the pavement counts. The plans also conveniently, in the same regard, show no paved walkways to serve two entrances to the proposed cellar. Why you need two, I don't care, but you would think there's going to be a paved walkway. They're not on the plan. I guess they'll snuck in later. Aside from the development coverage, there's still the matter of the excessive floor to area ratio, FAR, and exactly what is being calculated for that. The site plan reports a proposed 0.2 FAR, but this is noted as, quote, per the architect, as though the site plan engineer doesn't want to mess with this can of worms. Of course, one factor contributing to the excessive FAR is the mikveh, which it appears now will be a concrete box filled with sand all the way up. What is the deal with that? So they can later haul pails of sand out of there and build a mikveh undercover in violation? Why should this be allowed? Lastly, last but certainly not the least, is the garage. In April of 2017, a town of Ramapo assessor visited the house and took pictures through the windows, clearly revealing that the garage had been wholly converted for use as a shul. She communicated this in an email to the code enforcer and the building inspector. And as I have discovered and sent to this board, I believe it was last year, I sent you the fact that the shul has a website and the 1 Caro address is prominently displayed. If this is a shul, that situation, let alone the whole project, should have gone to the planning board from the very beginning. And if it's a shul and it was converted, where is the replacement garage? Now, the building inspector has recently affirmed in an email to Ramapo that the use is as a clergy residence only. So, if it's no longer a shul, it's still in violation of the fire safety laws because the garage has a clear open passage into the rest of the downstairs of the house with no firewall.
Thank you.
I'm almost done. One more paragraph. This was all pointed out in last year's complaint, and it is still shown as such on the plans, but the building inspector continues to allow all of this without any concern. Last sentence. The renewed construction of 1 Caro should be stopped. The current permit should be revoked, and a new corrected and completed application with proper ownership should be submitted. Either this board acts responsibly and soon, or it's time for residents to get other authorities involved to correct what is either outright professional incompetence or a case of special treatment.
Thank you, Mr. Levinson. If you would like, we'll take another copy of that complaint that you're speculating somehow miraculously disappeared from the village
Yes,
file. We'll make sure.
Yes, I asked you to put it in the file.
Of course.
I would have done it myself, but this is a copy of my work, for the record.
Pass that along to the village clerk. And we will refer the matter over to the village engineer and the village attorney to assess what's going on. Thank you, Mr. Levinson.
Building inspector, village engineer's done his job.
Thank you, Mr. Levinson. I just advised you what we're going to do. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Cunningham, name and address for the record, please.
Richard Cunningham, 10 Appledale Lane. Thank you for going to the police and following up on my issue, although it's not in my liking or my neighbor's likings, but we'll follow up with appropriately how we should do it. I still recommend that we put in speed bumps, but everybody seems to be against that. The E-route across the road, what's the story on that? I brought up last village board meeting. Private E-route across the road, Appledale and Craftwood.
Unfortunately, that was referred over to the village attorney. The village attorney wasn't able to make it to the meeting this evening. We'll make sure that we follow up at the next meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Next. Any other? Name and address for the record, please.
Chaim Rose, 5 Lancaster Lane.
Good evening, Mr. Rose.
Good evening. I noticed that Orange and Rockland has been doing extensive gas work and electric work in my area, and I was wondering who's going to be restoring the street?
They do. They eventually they come back, and because they have to take permits out to do that work, and then if they don't, or if it looks like they claim that they did and it doesn't look like it's a very good job, call Village Hall, we have the village engineer go out, and then he follows up with Orange and Rockland, and they come back and they fix it.
Okay, also I had another comment, and I'll try to say it as diplomatic as possible. As a Jewish individual, I feel this animosity from some residents in the village. One is against the house of worship, one is against a roof for sanitation removal before the Passover holiday. And I feel that the village is a place in America where all religions could thrive. And I feel that a lot of times I hear stuff that are just like totally out in left field. Allegations against my community. Some of them are quality of life issues, but some of them are issues just totally not warranted. And to me, it's depressing, frustrating, and it's just something that I wish it wouldn't be the case. And I'm trying to figure out, why can't we all live in harmony instead of picking on little details that are just not relevant to the entire village? And for me, it's very frustrating. So, just some feedback, and I just, as a resident of the village, I'm just frustrated, and it's just hurtful sometimes.
Well, Mr. Rose, thank you for your comments. Obviously, there is a general tenor in the village that we're trying to address. Sometimes they say you can't rationalize the irrational, and I think that's what you're trying to do. Folks believe sometimes the way they believe, and I don't necessarily like what they think and how they articulate it and the direction that they're going. It's their right, I guess, to be that way. However, I guess the hope is that saner minds and reasonable minds will eventually prevail with regard to that sentiment. But I agree with you. And again, there's issues. It's not unique to a particular group, race, creed, color, religious persuasion, whatever the case may be. We have issues. That's why we're a village, and that's why we have laws and things of that nature. But you're absolutely right. There seems to be a tide that is an ugly one, and the hope is to try to reverse that tide. But thank you for your comments, and we will try to address it as best as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
May I add something, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I would add to that there are members in our community who feel very, very much connected to this community. Don't take the voices of a few loud people as a voice of all Chestnut Ridge. Not all Chestnut Ridge is like that. All Chestnut Ridge believes that we all should be able to live together in harmony. When we have difficulties, yes, we will begin to get over those difficulties and challenges, but most villages that I know, that I speak to, we want to live in harmony. So don't take what a few villages say and do as a voice of all Chestnut Ridge. That is not the case in Chestnut Ridge. This is a very harmonious village. people want to get along, work together, and work through our issues.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to add another thing that I actually see going on today in politics, but applies somewhat here. That is because there is criticism leveled at certain members of the Orthodox Jewish community, I suppose, regarding their disclosures in building permits and their compliance with building codes. That doesn't mean that there's an animosity toward the entire community. Just because someone is pointing out what they see as potential violations of law or wrongs by whoever, and it just happens to be a member of the Jewish community, doesn't mean that they are against the Jewish community as a whole. So you've got to realize, I mean, we've had permit violations from everybody. They're not reserved to the Orthodox Jewish community, trust me. Believe me, I've seen it, I've been here long enough. There's been violations by every religion, race, creed, code, anything you want to determine. But I just add that just because you might have heard things being singled out, I wouldn't say singled out, being observed that involves your community, doesn't mean that there's anything against the community as a whole. And I think what everyone needs to do within their own communities, their own friends, their own neighbors, is to make sure that there's compliance with our laws. That's all we ask. You want to build something? Comply with our laws. Get the right building permits, keep them up to date, keep your plans up to date, and build according to your plans. And if there's any issues, then you go to our building department. And if you still have issues, you can get zoning zoning, you might be able to get a zoning variance in a particular case. You might have to go to the planning board. But there are people where this village is set up to help people build, but only in accordance with law. And it's those that build without accordance with law, outside law, that you hear about. And lately, it just seems that there are a lot of comments regarding the Orthodox Jewish community and compliance with those laws. But that doesn't mean that there's a general animosity to the whole community.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Okay. Name and address for the record, please.
Tim Conlon, 4 New Africtown Road.
Good evening, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So I think there's a concept about whether anyone is above the law. And if you take the position that no one is above the law, I think that really explains the situation that we're here, that we're talking about here. So I live within 500 feet of 1 Carroll Court. And I'm wondering why, if there's all these violations with this property, why was I never asked about a variance? Is there no variance for this project? I see this project every day, 3-4 times a day when I go past here. I have watched while this one house, which has been, this neighborhood, it's a very neat and tidy neighborhood. We even don't have overhead lines. It's a new development. It's really nice. So now for the last almost 2 years, there's been this huge hole in the ground. And it's a big hole. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, but it's really a very large hole. How could this have been permitted to go on? There's children all over the place. Are there no safety regulations? I mean, I sort of feel like the village oversight is kind of lax here. I don't know how else to put it, but I feel as though there's a kind of a responsibility not only to maintain visually. I mean, he's had a portable toilet in the driveway for the last 18 months. For a week or 2 weeks, it was blown over on the side. You know, I mean, we're living here in suburbia. We're a well-to-do community. we might not be Saddle River, but, you know, we're not at the bottom of the barrel. Don't people sort of have some pride? Don't you, Mr. Mayor, have some pride in the standards that you maintain? I mean, I'm just kind of surprised that this fella at One Carroll Court and his neighbors, you know, like, he gets visitors, you know. I mean, oh, yeah, hey, I see you've got a portable toilet in your yard. That was here, you know, that was here a year and a half ago. Were they still using it or something? I mean, I have higher standards than this. I wouldn't do that. I mean, I try and keep my lawn mowed. You know, you have regulations here about the length of your grass, all these things that are not life-threatening, but they're sort of collectively how we Americans want to keep our neighborhood. That's why we moved to Chestnut Ridge. That's why we maintain these laws and regulations, and that is what we've agreed that we're all going to abide by. And I just don't, it's beyond me how you let this go. Even if it's just an appearance issue, regardless of whether it has to do with the electrical or, you know, all these other issues, there's kind of a, how can I say it, a beauty aspect of living here in this community that really needs addressing. And I wish you would take it up a little more with a little more action. And when will I mean, I live literally 500 feet, so when will someone ask me? I just feel as though this whole issue could have been avoided if you're going to put in what is essentially a community center. Why not just ask your neighbors? Why not just say, oh, Mr. Conlon, you know, we want to put this in, you know, we want to, you know, here are the reasons, this, but nobody even asked. I mean, try and sneak it in, kind of in the cover of darkness. It just, I don't know, I just feel as though we can do better. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Conlon. And I will respond, and I will try to respond as best as I can on behalf of the village. One Carroll, unfortunately, has been an issue in the village. I admit that. We're trying to resolve it. We're trying to go through. That was the whole idea with utilizing the village engineer for the second set of eyes. The whole idea with now getting the village attorney involved. And you're right, no one is above the law, and we abide by that. And I'll take a little bit of offense to the degree that you would even intimate that I have no desire with regard to trying to keep the standards of the village as they are. And I am offended by that a little bit, but not very much, because it's misplaced. I am very much invested in this village, more so probably than anybody in this room, okay? The amount of time that these trustees, in addition to myself, put in to trying to operate this village goes above and beyond. And I'll give you the keys tomorrow if you think you're ready to take it on, okay? And I say that tongue in cheek, so please don't take that the wrong way. All right? We have 2,500 residential mailboxes in this fine village and approximately 500 to 600 commercial.